Good, guys. It's a very, very big pleasure to be giving a CEMS webinar. And I'd like to thank Elisa and Leon for organizing. I am, of course, myself a CEMSy, and I know how selected this group is. So it's a very, very big pleasure. Something funny, I was preparing for the webinar, then I decided to take a bath to relax a bit. And I thought like, oh, holy shit, I am too relaxed now to do this webinar for 40, 50 CEMSs. So I had to energize myself again with a little bit of pop music. In fact, I'm a very big fan of Lady Gaga, especially the classics. So Paparazzi gave me energy again to be here talking to you and having this very special conversation. Cool. So, guys, this is our 90-minute webinar on case interview. You can probably see my screen that it is saying workshop 1 of 3. You might be wondering what that means. So just to let you know, this webinar, this is a first session where I usually share best practices and tips following our methodology. And I will explain a bit better what that means. And we will offer a second and a third session afterwards. The next session is actually on Saturday in 2 days. So if you are interested in the follow-up session, I will provide a link at the end of the presentation. The second session is focused on solving a live case with the student, right? So after you have the best practices and the methodology of this session, it makes a lot more sense what we're going to do in the second session, right, with a volunteer. So, and the third session is actually still undecided what we're going to focus on. We actually open for suggestions. Cool. Okay. So before I start, actually, anything, just to introduce myself properly, talk a bit about myself in 1 minute. So I'm Flavio. I'm from 87, so probably no one here is as old as I am. I'm Brazilian, studied at FGV for my bachelor's, spent a year in Switzerland for my high school exchange. Then I went to France for my bachelor exchange. I studied at Sciences Po, sometimes dressing up fashionably on Monday to go to school. Then I did my CEMS at FGV, but with exchanges at ESADE, Sydney. It was very good. And now I live in Berlin, Germany. So whenever you are around, please ping me, visit me. Let's have a coffee or a drink. Professionally, this is my trajectory. So I started founding 2 businesses when I was in college. One, funny enough, for hair removal. So I was lasering people, not me personally, but my employees and team. And I also opened a smoothie bar because I'm a big fan of smoothies. So that was a very fun experience very early on. Then I sold my businesses. They were very small. I moved on to consulting, actually to learn some skills and eventually become a better company founder, because this was always my end goal. I spent 2.5 years at Hartford Little. Then I did CEMS. I moved on to McKinsey after CEMS. Also did 2.5 years there. Worked in Brazil and Australia. Had a lot of fun. I definitely recommend, if you are convinced that consulting is for you, like, do your best and give all you got. Don't give up getting an offer from a top firm, because everything changes in your career after that, that's for sure. So I left McKinsey. I didn't do an MBA. I left the offer on the table to actually go to SumUp and be more entrepreneurial. I launched also my app, the Case Interview Academy. Maybe some of you have heard about it, not sure. but it was a very fun thing to build with everything I learned over my years before consulting and in consulting. Then I left SumUp, actually already here in Berlin, to found a new startup, Meteoric, which is actually, excitingly enough, being launched tomorrow. So I have a ton of work to do, but also it's a very, very important time for me. And HighBridge Management Academy, that you might have seen already the logo there, which is also one of my new businesses, which I'm building with a team. And I will talk a little bit about it in the next slide. So I was feeling something was missing in the slide, then I put something for Switzerland, a dear country, because people find cows funny. Good. So why am I talking to you today, right? Why is CEMS actually partnering up with me again to actually provide this workshop or webinar to you? Is because of my actually experience with the Case Interview Academy. I was a coach I am still, but for the last 3 years. And I produced this app, which became actually the most downloaded app for case interview on App Store and Google Play. So I've been helping candidates for a long time, right? Over 100 right now. As you know, consulting is at the top firms is like super competitive. They usually accept 1 to 2% of the candidates. And my students usually have an acceptance rate of 70% when they have coaching with me and with the app. So it's a method that has been working. It's not the only one, but it is proven effective. So yeah, why HighBridge, right? I just wanted to spend just a couple of minutes, bear with me, to explain what am I building. Maybe it's something for you, maybe it's interesting. So there are two problems that ambitious consulting candidates like yourselves have, and myself a few years ago. So these problems can be categorized, like in a good case, as before joining a firm and after joining a firm, right? Some people only think about before joining because it's already so hard, right? Why do you have to think about after joining? But let's talk a little bit about that. So usually before joining a firm, you have case interview, right? To practice and to improve in order to actually be among the best. You're usually competing with the best of the best already. So it is a big challenge per se. Everybody knows that. And we know that there is a confusing landscape of materials and things to study, and we all been there. Like, we don't know exactly which advice to follow. There are so many and so many materials. Some of them are bad, some of them are okay, some of them are good, but eventually it's very confusing. But besides the case interview, also there is the lack sometimes of personal impact stories, right? This is often underestimated by candidates, but you need to impress also in the fit part of the interview. So before joining, these are the two main problems, like to have very good stories and also to crack cases like the best of the best. After joining the firm, I think many people also have problems, right? I myself was struggling in my first project, my first 6 months, to get up to speed and to learn all the hacks and all the communication tips and how to manage your boss and your client. So this is often not given to you very in a structured way. The consulting tool set it is developed over the time that you are working for a consulting firm, maybe 2 years, 3, 4, how many you stay. But officially, like the training that the companies give you, it's on 1 week long, right? Is when you join, you have a 1 week training, which is one case, one problem solving training, and then the next training you're going to do is after the first year or even a year and a half, which means that actually they don't give you a lot of training how to succeed, right? They trust you're very good, and you're very smart, but you have to learn a lot of the insider tips and best practices by yourself. This is a fact, and you can talk to everybody who has worked in consulting. Sometimes people put 100 hours per week, which is insane and unhealthy, because they lack these things that nobody is actually taking the time, because everybody's so busy when you are in consulting, to take the time and really teach you everything you need to know. And after joining the firm, you can also, so you don't know beforehand if you would like the work, right? So this is also a problem. We know that there are plenty of internships out there. They are horrible, right? You don't have a mentor, you have repetitive tasks, you don't learn as much as you can. So why am I saying all of this? Like, I'm just explaining why I got the inspiration to create HighBridge. Like, what's the problem we're trying to solve? So just a couple more minutes. HighBridge is a boot camp, right? An 8-week summer boot camp built by ex-McKinsey, Bain, and BCG consultants to make you consulting ready, right? So we are combining, this is we are combining case interview training with advanced consulting tool set like productivity hacks, interpersonal skills, relationship management, and so on. With a real consulting project, you learn on the job, work lab simulations and role play, and workshops on different topics that we believe it's important for the formation of a young consultant. And the fun part, right? Of course, everything is fun, in my opinion, but this is actually the relaxing part of experience and culture, right? We are going to start in Berlin this summer, and you can check our website for more information. So this course is 100% taught in English. You don't need to speak any German, of course. This is our team. This is me and Roger, my co-founder. Besides us, we have 7 coaches from McKinsey, Bain, and BCG on board. We are slowly adding them up to our webpage as well. We have amazing people, guys, people who really combined have maybe 30 years of experience at MBB, and build trainings and deliver trainings. And our coaches, we have the most popular coach on Prep Lounge on board, who is Francesco Rieppi, over 2,600 cases delivered. And we have also the second one as well, Vlad. So yeah, I'm very proud of the team assembling, and it's the first time that coaches collaborate to actually create a full course, which is not made by independent consultants. So usually you study without supervision. You sometimes get confused. With us, you study with a rigorous and time-proven case-solving methodology. You get specific feedback. Usually internships have weak mentors, like learning is slower than it's possible, right? And we offer, we partner up with companies, actually provide real consulting projects to them. It's very similar to the business project in one sense, but on the other sense, the bar is way higher, and the professionalism also, because we are applying the McKinsey, Bain, and BCG problem solving methodology. Of course, we have mentoring and international experience. So this is what we are putting together. You can always check our website for more information. You can ask us questions, and of course, you can apply, which I would love you to do, because, oh yeah, I didn't mention we have a refund guarantee, lifetime access application, because we are processing batches of applications, right? We will have a small class in 2020, 25 students, and we're processing batches, right? So the next deadline is March 31st. We are going to analyze the batch. We're going to give scholarships of 20 to 80%, because we want success stories, right? And we want people like you guys on board. So we are subsidizing definitely students to have this unique opportunity to have an intense training with us. Risk-free application, doesn't cost anything. You end up getting a case training because it's part of our selection process, and from someone with experience and with feedback. Okay, so that's it Now I'm done with the marketing and I can go into the content. Cool. So today we are going to cover mainly a brief overview of the case interview. Then I'm going to spend 40 minutes or 45 minutes in the methodology that we apply for cases. And finally, Q&A. For questions, please write them down and remember them during the session because we are going to tackle all of them in the end. So please bear with me. If you have questions, I'm happy to take them. You can either write them on the chat of Zoom itself, or you can speak up, right? Everybody is invited to also talk. Okay. First, so that I can customize, and usually I want to be the most effective possible today, I'd like to invite you to actually answer to this short form, which take 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and it helps me also evaluating the level of the cohort. So I will post this link here. Where is the comment box? It disappeared. Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm posting on the chat. Please take 2-3 minutes only to reply. I will check the answers live and I will customize our session today to the benefit of everybody. So, yes, and there is an extra thing I'd like to mention. We are giving away our app access, like our premium app, for 20 people, right? So the very high chances of getting it, because we are 44 people, so almost 50% of chance of getting it, giving away these subscriptions to our app so you can study by yourself. Okay. So yes, sorry guys, I was messaging the wrong channel, like I was messaging Lisa. Okay, cool. So please take a couple of minutes. It will be very helpful for us. And you can get this app also, which is worth $100. It's worth 2 minutes. So we're starting to get some responses. Good. Mhm. Okay, guys, one more minute and we close the form. We have a nice mix of different universities. Love it. People from everywhere. Okay. Okay, cool. I think everybody is submitting the last ones, but let's start here. We have 55% of the cohort has not been interviewed yet. And only a few people have been interviewed actually, mostly BCG, Deloitte, Oliver Wyman. We have one person that has been interviewed at McKinsey and one who has been interviewed at A.T. Kearney. Okay, how many cases have you practiced? A third, 1 to 5, a third, 6 to 10, and a third, none. Okay, we have a mixed cohort here, and actually a few people have done 11 to 30 cases. Nobody has done more than 31 cases. Your biggest difficulties, lots of people. Okay, clarifying questions, a big hit. Structuring as well. Synthesis and conclusion, brainstorming. Interesting. Graphs and math is not, it's just 20% of people. Listening recap, 14. Okay, good. We have to talk more about clarifying questions. Have used any of the materials below? Yes, case in point, rep lounge, 40%, feature chain, 1/3, drafting cases, a few people, and many haven't seen the others. Are you planning to work this summer? Yes, 80%. And most people haven't secured a contract yet. Okay, cool. Got it. Thank you so much, guys, for answering. By tomorrow, you will know if you got a subscription. I hope you do. Wow. So, questions, as I mentioned, we can tackle them in the end. So without further delay, let's start. I'll move fast because I understand that we are all very well informed about cases, right? I will not be too basic, I hope. So if I am moving too fast and you are trying to take notes, remember that this is being recorded, so you can always check out what was the information about. A case interview typically has a personal fit, a case portion, and a closing chat. Typically, normally 1 hour, but there are some situations where you have 2 hours with an interviewer. It depends, right? Depends on the round, it depends on the firm, and it depends how busy your interviewer is at that particular day. But you can expect those times. Sometimes your case is only 20 minutes. And remember, you have to be prepared for a closing chat as well, right? So bring questions to the interviewer. Don't bring stupid questions like, what's the difference between McKinsey, Bain, and BCG? No, don't ask that. Ask their opinion about the company they work for, in the culture and what is special about it, right? Instead of comparing, they will usually say like, I haven't worked for the other firm, so I don't know. I like questions also around the interviewer's experience and especially what they're working on right now, because then they will have a fresher memory what to talk about, their current industries, projects, what's the biggest challenge they're facing. I also like to ask what's their opinion about the key characteristics of a strong performer, especially a junior consultant. So those questions are smart and good. You can always ask them. Very well. For the methodology we follow, we organized the skills into 7 buckets. This is the way that it makes it easy for us to teach, and it's also actually seen by firms like McKinsey as specific skills as well, right? So we have listening and recap, clarification questions, structuring, graph and math, brainstorming, synthesis, and business acumen. This method has been developed over 1,000 hours and perfected a long time, right? Applied over and over again to different candidates. I am myself very methodical, I assume that. And I admit that. And basically, I spend a lot of time preparing for my interviews and preparing my method. I excelled at McKinsey, actually. We have a chat here. Oh yeah, sorry, full screen again. Okay, cool. So I did very well at McKinsey to the point that the HR called me like 2 days later and offered me the job and said, hey, you are distinctive, you did really well, you impressed everyone. I might have overdone it a bit. Maybe I studied too much. I did like 3 months full training. But as I said, I'm very methodical and I created this method, the 7 skills. I believe in being pragmatic, being like, what do I have to do now in order to release, actually to liberate your brain to think about the case, right? It's challenging enough to solve a new business problem in a new industry. And definitely, you don't need to remain in doubt about the method. Like, what should I do now? What should I say? Is it the right time to ask a question? So those things should be past you for sure, and you should concentrate on the content. My training and my method actually created, I created a few frameworks for inspiration, never for memorization. That's very important, of course, as you know. Never memorize a framework, you will sound robotic. But this is the sort of thing, the sort of structure and rigor that I have imprinted in our 7 skills method, and this is what we deliver through the app and through the HighBridge bootcamp as well, combined with the method of other coaches. This is for you just to have an idea. So let's start deep diving into the 7 skills themselves. I start with the 7th one, which is the only one that you cannot improve overnight. After this workshop, guys, I trust you will be able to be better in all other skills. But I'm not at all sure that you're gonna be able to improve your business acumen overnight, right? This is something you build years, of course, you know that. Usually through formal education, informal education, right? That's where you can impact it the most in the short run, which means discussions, right? Talking about business with people, readings, and solving cases, right? Which puts you in the shoes of the decision maker. What I usually recommend, actually, if you want to get an offer, you want to increase your chances, please delete your social media apps from your phone. Like, this is like, it drains your time and attention. It is addictive. It is made to be addictive. Right? You always scroll and click and watch and read more and more. So if you want to impact your future now, just delete them. Install McKinsey, Bain, and BCG's app. Start reading the language that your interviewers speak. and speaks. And also, I put some recommendations here. I love The Economist. I read sometimes Sloan and HBR. So these are some good sources for you to replace your Instagram app for. And definitely, you will learn in 5 minutes here, 10 here, and there. You learn something new. Okay, let's talk about the 6 skills that you can definitely. This is more useful for today. Listening and recap. Only 14% of people said that this skill is troublesome. But I would like to spend just a couple minutes talking about that because it's important. First of all, before anything, maybe the most powerful thing I did in my training back then in 2014 was my mistakes notebook. Most people don't do it. I definitely recommend you to do it. You need to write down every case, every time you finish practicing, you need to write down what you got wrong, what you forgot on a notebook or electronic document, whatever. Because this is the most valuable lessons that you have, right, for the next training. And you should reread that list every time from the beginning. It becomes it starts to grow, right, over time. And you notice that you're going to forget or get wrong maybe 2, 3, 4 times the same thing until you realize, like, fuck, not again. And you get angry at yourself. So to fix it, so do it. Concentrate it in the same place and reread your whole list since the beginning every time before a case training. This is very, very powerful. Including like doing the same cases again. This is also something I recently realized that helps a lot. Good. Note taking is pretty obvious. I don't want to spend time here. It's just like, try to keep your notes organized only for you, because it doesn't matter for the interviewer. They don't evaluate your notes. But I definitely recommend people not to use as many pieces of paper as they need. Only one side of the paper. Like, it's very clumsy to be flipping around. It's like, where did I put the number again? No, I lost it. So keep it simple. Like, put in front of you. Don't need to pile up the papers either. So have your papers in front of you, all spread across the table, one-sided. Use which paper for a certain purpose. Like, this is my note-taking one. This is my structure one. This is my math one. And you're going to look organized and in control. Usually consultants use this insider tip. They use the horizontal format when they are writing down, because then you can transform this into a slide. Small detail. Listening actively, it's something else that I wanted to touch upon, because sometimes candidates, they don't listen to the briefing and they don't listen to what I'm saying as an interviewer. They're just taking notes. They're busy like writing everything they can. The problem is they're not paying attention, right? They're not absorbing the content. And then they reread what they wrote down in the attempt of understanding the problem, finally. So that's really obvious for me as an interviewer. Don't do that, right? If you have the tendency of doing that, because you're focused on note-taking, try to reduce your note-taking to just numbers, right? Or keywords. Or even more radical, practice not taking notes at all with your next partner. So you just absorb the information like you should be able to, actually. It's not a huge amount. And listen actively, like give it back to them. And then note-taking is a support, always. Like, it shouldn't be transcribing as fast as possible. Another best practice for the case I need to emphasize here, many of you already know that, is action plans. What do I call that? What do I call action plans? It's basically telling the interviewer what you're up to. But I like particularly people who do it for the next 2 steps, which means telling them what you're about to do and then afterwards, right? If you listen to a case opening, you can definitely do an action plan that sounds like this. Oh, that's very interesting. I never done a government case before. Show something, say anything that shows enthusiasm. I will recap the situation, just repeat it to confirm it, and then afterwards I will ask some clarification questions. I'm giving them a roadmap. I'm showing that I'm under control. I know what I want to do, and I am client friendly, right? Because everything in the case interview is carefully designed by very smart people at the firms, the companies. Pick samples of your behavior that are going to happen in front of the client. And this is one of them, right? So action plans are meant to put the people on the same page instead of like just doing and leaving people in the dark. So they understand what you're up to. And they are aligned about your actions. Finally, the recap itself. Guys, I get a lot of cases where people recap for longer than I explain the case. Please be brief, right? So please be impatient. I like impatient candidates who are like sitting at the edge of the chairs and they want to start, but they don't stop and say like, okay, so our client is based in France and they have revenue. Doesn't mean that you need to speak fast, but you have to be effective, right? You just repeat what is useful and important, and you shorten the briefing even when you are recapping. Try to do that. On the app itself, I make people record themselves because I think that's a really useful way to actually get better at recapping stuff. All right, so you might have questions. Please write them down. Unfortunately, it's more effective like that. I will keep on going and happy to come back to any, including your previous experiences, right? If you have been interviewed before, you can also ask about those situations. Clarification question. So I will spend a bit more time here because people are really confused and have questions about this. So clarifying is about, is the first time that you're really doing something, right, useful as a consultant in front of the interviewer, right? You're asking questions. So they are very curious to see what are your questions. This is super important for the interviewer. My usual recommendation is the following. Ask 3 to 7 clarification questions and focus on questions that improve your structure, right? Will make you better at the structure, but they don't touch structure specific topics. This is a sin in case interviews. I will explain. Usually, people who are not structured about problem solving, they guess, right? They kind of like brainstorming the head, they start talking, it could be this, it could be that, it could be that. So some people start asking questions and testing hypotheses in the clarification questions, which is something you should not do because that's not structured. You will surely miss a few points if you do that, and you will never be able, it's very hard to be messy in without taking time to think and write down and structure something, right? So you're gonna sound really disorganized if you start asking questions about what's like possible or likely to be happening and asking like crazy detailed questions. So this is not the approach. What are the types of clarification questions that I recommend? There are 5. Definitions: what exactly happened, goal, business model, industry. As you see, definitions are questions around ambiguous terms, right? If I ask you, what is the best alternative for the client? You can say like, hey, Flavio, thank you so much for the question. What's the best alternative for the client? But what does best mean, right? Does it mean the most profitable or the highest revenue or something else, right? So consultants are super picky about words and they don't tolerate ambiguity, right? They try to be very, sometimes there is a problem solving sessions, 1-2 hours just to discuss terms that we're going to write in the final report. So wording is important because it's a consultant's main tool, language, communication. And this is why you should ask questions about definitions, and this doesn't touch your structure. That's why it is appropriate to ask, like, double click on that one. What exactly happened is you have the right to explore a bit further the main thing that happened, right, in the case. For instance, if profits dropped, and they say like profits dropped sharply, you can ask like, okay, I understand profits dropped sharply, but by how much? How much? What's the number that we're talking about? It's like 50%, 10%, 90%, right? How urgent is the situation? And how long did they have they been dropping, right? Have they been dropping for a year, or for a month, or for 10 years, right? So I usually ask questions about the magnitude and time frame of the main metric, not anything else. Like the revenues and costs, have they changed, by how much? So this is part of your structure, right? You should not touch them before you take time to think. Of course, you can ask that later. In qualitative cases, you can also ask what exactly happened, right? So for instance, the client wants to enter China. Do they do it? And then you can ask like, why do they want to enter China in the first place? I wasn't in the meeting room when they decided that. Can I understand? So this might help you understand better the situation and recommend something. So what exactly happened is one double click, but don't misuse it. Goal is around objectives. Everybody knows that. Old Victor Chang still like already talked about that years ago. So here we're talking about also magnitude and time frame. As a consultant, you have to show results orientation. You have to know that there is a number to be achieved, and you need to know this number. You need, by the end of the case, you need to know if you reached it. Then you have business model. Maybe one of the most important categories, right? So you need to understand what the client does in order to suggest anything, to advise them, right? Don't assume that you understand the industry just because it's a supermarket. I don't have any questions. Use a real world example. Like, are they a supermarket like Carrefour? They have huge stores, and they also have like convenience stores, and they sell food and also appliances. Is that it? Use real world examples to confirm that this is what you're thinking. Of course, if there is a new industry of insurance or derivatives of whatever, the chemical that you never heard about, you can ask more questions. You can ask, who's the customer? Why do they pay for that? What's the alternative, right? And so on. Finally, industry. In financial cases, is it useful to ask if it's a market-wide effect, that like a phenomenon, or if it's specific to the company? So stick to the five categories. I created 5 categories before entering McKinsey. I coached 100 candidates, and I never added a new category there. So to be honest, I don't think it's a good idea to ask any of the questions that are not in those buckets. Not all cases need to be, you need to ask questions in all of those buckets. You have to apply your business judgment there. All right, so this is clarification questions. And you can ask me in the end. Something's not clear. We're gonna do structuring, and then let me see here. Then we do a little break, right? So we do break for going to the toilet, to get some water, to breathe. And then it's gonna be better. Structuring. So there are 3 formats that a structure can follow. Oh, I thought there was like 1,000 frameworks. Well, I'm not talking about frameworks. I'm talking about formats. It's a bit different. It can have a quantitative format, numbers oriented, right? Also known as drivers tree, profitability tree. It can be a qualitative tree, right? Different elements, anything, right? So from you can talk about the 3 C's or the 4 P's and a million other things. And you have mixed structures, which mix qualitative and quantitative, basically for decision making. The next slide explains a little bit better when to use each one of them. Important thing for structuring, like it is challenging, of course. You need to practice. You need to start thinking on a structured way. It takes time, a little time to get used to it, but it's very useful for life. You need to present well, right? Language has a huge impact on how people perceive you. And one tip I give you here is like whenever you're presenting a structure, number everything on it, right? Deliver the first level number. Like I have 3 factors, A, B, and C. For A, I want to explore 2 areas, D and E. And in D, I'm thinking about those examples, and so on, right? So I put letters, but you can definitely put numbers as well. And this sounds a lot more structured and helps your interviewer following what you're saying. There are guided and open cases. Some people know this as interviewee and interviewer led. No, the opposite. Interviewer and interviewee led. I prefer guided and open. It's easier to say and it's easier to understand also. So guided is usually a McKinsey classic case. Also applied at Bain very often and many other companies. It's when your interviewer guides you and asks a question that might not have anything to do with the previous section you were talking about. The thing is, you have to expect that. Otherwise, it sounds like you did something wrong, right? So you just presented a structure and then he changed the subject. So you might have done the wrong structure or something. But it's not always the case. It's not actually, you don't need to think like that. They're just trying to get samples of your skills really fast without letting you to like wander around and go to wherever you want to go. They want a sample of the structuring, a sample of math, brainstorming, conclusion, and that's it. That's why it's guided. It has been designed, right? So consultants went to the whiteboard and said, like, what do we need to test? Oh, we need to test this. So it's a minimum viable product, let's say, for interviews. The open case, it is testing the same skills, very same skills. You actually only find out that you are on an open case by the end of your structured presentation. Because you had the recap, you asked your qualification questions, you did your structure, and then you finish presenting your structure. And then if you're in an open case, your interviewer is gonna lay back and say like, all right, sounds fair. What do you need to know? Or I have numbers here. What do you want to know? Right? So they will put you on the steering wheel. You have to drive the case. You have to know how to formulate and test hypotheses. So it is a little bit more challenging than a guided case because it has that extra factor of being confident without having your interviewer telling you what to do exactly. If you're at BCG, you're probably going to have these types of cases. And your interviewer is often not going to help you so much, right? So they're going to, okay, let's see how this person thinks, what they ask. And you're going to ask, are you going to ask for the right things? Are you going to explore your tree in the right order? Because there is a technique to explore it, right? So this is the main difference between guided and open cases. Let me see if I forgot to say anything. Right, so let's talk about the structure formats because this is useful for you to have a framework how to think. If there is a financial issue with a case, with a client, and we know the financial origin of the issue, right, we should use a qualitative structure, right? You already know the number that's changing and you will look for the reasons why this is happening, right? If you still don't know why it's changing, right, you still have to isolate the real factor that is behind this change, then you should apply a quantitative tree. The classic case is a profitability case. You don't know why profits are going down, so I need to diagnose it. I need to know first what's changing. One of the most dangerous mistakes that people make in structuring is mixing a framework, a structure that should be quantitative with other things. I'll give you an example. We have this client, he produces, I don't know, flip-flops, and their profits are down. What's happening? A candidate that mixes factors, is usually inefficient. Right? They will say like, yeah, we have to look at the profits. We have to look what's actually causing the profit decline. I'll look at two things: revenues, costs. Revenues, you have these different product lines. I don't know how you segment them. You have the volume and price, and costs. You have fixed costs and variable costs, blah blah blah. And then I would like to understand what's the customer thinking, what's their behavior, what are they buying or not, taste, blah blah blah. I want to know about competitors and so on. This is inefficient. Usually, very often gives you the ding letter, right? So you just bomb it if you do that. Because what if the problem is the cost of the rubber? Why are you wasting my time talking about the client's purchase or buying criteria? It's not the problem, right? So you're trying to be messy in the wrong way. You're trying to like boil the ocean and try to solve everything, but it's not the case. So you need to first find out that the rubber has price increase. After that, you can explore the problem. You can even open a new structure. If you're in an open case, this structure is actually just a tool for you to work out the problem. So you don't need to do only once. At McKinsey, they will always ask you for only one, almost all the time. But you can open like, okay, let's understand why the cost of rubber. The cost of rubber can be increasing because of demand and offer, right? Because that determines the price, and so on. So remember that financial issue isolated first, and then you can apply qualitative training. If there's no financial issue, there's no problem. There is an opportunity, right? We want to grow. We want to enter a new market. We want to open a new factory, or we want to close a factory. Maybe there is a problem. It has a decision involved, right? Then you should use a mixed structure, right? You should analyze qualitative, quantitative, and eventually even risks, because that's how you should make decisions in consulting and in business and maybe in life, right? So you consider qualitative aspects. Is it are we going to enter this market? Is it attractive? Do we have barriers? Are we going to be winners in this market? This is all qualitative. But quantitative is the business case. How much profits? What's our return on investment of this business case? And then you have, of course, the risks. So no mystery there. My alarm was sounding. So this is a structure of a decision that has to be made. If not, if there's no decision and no financial issue, you probably should use a qualitative structure. Okay, guys, I put here our Instagram. It's newly born. If you are interested in having examples and tips, I'm gonna start posting more and more often on our Instagram. So you can follow us at HighBridge Academy. Right? So I will talk about the last skills now, and then we can do the Q&A. Let me share my screen again. Okay, cool. So let's talk about maths, graphs and math. Most people said they don't have difficulties there, but I'd like to give you a pair of hints here. When you get graphs to read, I usually tell my coaches, read them out loud, right? You don't need time to be silent, actually, in silence about that. You can read them as you sort them, like, oh, I'm seeing, let's do an example. Here, I'm seeing, it's a bar chart and there's a pie chart and a little table. Let's take a look at that. Oh, the cost of the burger in terms of percent of sales price. Oh, you can ask questions like, does it mean that the burger costs $1, like X% goes to this meat, bread, cheese, salad, sauce? Yes. Okay, clear. So we have data from 2 years ago and last year. Wow, I see that meat has increased a lot, right? Around 50% increase. Yeah, mental math, they like it. So 19 to 28 is around 50% increase. Bread is also increasing, but not as much. Cheese is the same. Salad is decreasing. Cheaper salad, but not to compensate the meat. And sauce is stable. Quality burger sales is, okay, I can see that it's mainly a burger business with what's other food? Fries and milkshake. Okay, normal. Typically things you should not eat. Yeah, okay. Revenue data. We have the revenue 2 years ago, last year for burgers and number of burgers sold. We have increased our price by 10 cents. 10 cents around like, okay, so 45 cents is 10%. 10 cents is like 1/4, maybe 2-3% increase in price. That's very little compared to the huge increase in meat costs. And then we have the burger sold going from 242 to 243 by 1 million. Definitely revenues is not the big issue here. It has gone up, at least for burgers, which is the majority of our sales, because our prices and our volume went up. So the problem here is indeed in costs. So I would like to look why is cost increasing so sharply, especially meat and also bread, because this is definitely causing our profitability issue. So graphs are about, these are simple ones. So about like extracting insights, absorbing information, asking questions, extracting insights. How many insights, Flavio? People ask me, like, what do I have to say here? Usually 1 to 3 insights, right? Don't try to extract 17 things from graphs like this, because you're going to get lost, you're going to lose focus, and it's usually 1 to 3 things that are hiding. And why do you have to read it out loud? Because you are silent for such a long time during the case, right? So you ask for time, all structuring, for including, for brainstorming. So here you can actually speak up. When you get math questions, you should, any questions in the case, remember that you should recap and clarify the question. Most people, they don't. They just like, and by how much has our revenue increased in the burger, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me take some time to think about it. And they might get the wrong question. You're nervous, remember, and everybody is. You should always recap any additional information and question that you get from an interviewer in your own words. This will help you absorb it and also correct it if you misunderstood anything. And of course, you might clarify something, right? In math, it's usually definitions you have to clarify sometimes, and you have to clarify what's the goal, like what's the unit of the answer that the person is looking for. I tell people that the most powerful thing that you can do in math is separating your conceptual part from your computations. Most people don't do that. They start calculating, your brain is insanely doing 2 different things. It's thinking about the conceptual path to solve the problem, and at the same time, you are requiring it to do math, some multiplications and so on. This is very hard for your brain, right? So I tell people, always build your equations first. Practice that. It's not easy, but practice just variables, just steps, calculation, formulas. Then align your plan. Okay, this was your question. I'm planning to do step A, this and this, step B, step C. You can ask for help. Remember, it's not that you have to do 100% by yourself. In a case interview, you need to sound coachable, be coachable, listen and be open for help, and know how to ask for help. Ask for help in a very messy way, like complex, like you don't even know what you need. It is very hard for someone to help you. But if you have a clear calculation plan and something is not really 100% like certain for you, you might explain it and say like, I didn't get this step, but something looks weird here. I don't know what to do in this place. But explain what you've done so far, because this is a structured way to ask for help. You might get help. A good interviewer will give you hints so that you catch it by yourself. If you don't, they will give you the answer just to move on, because they want everybody to have a good experience. and don't get stuck for too long. It doesn't mean that you bombed, right? The whole interview is an assessment. It's not that you have to get everything. Then you align the plan. You get a green light from your interviewer to calculate, and only then you plug in the numbers and calculate. It takes discipline to do that, right? But it helps you separate the two mental processes in your head. Finally, the presentation has to be structured, and you always have to give an opinion about a number. Remember, you are paid not to calculate things, you're paid for the so what, right? For the conclusions. You have to say if the number is high or low, good or bad news, what does it mean for the case? Of course, it depends. Brainstorming, it's, very business acumen dependent, let's say. And I think here you have to focus always on quantity and not quality of ideas. Most candidates, they will ask for time, always do, right? So that's my first recommendation. Maybe your interviewer is going to say, like, tell me what you think, like, say it out loud, we don't have time. Then you have to be able to improvise. It's good to practice both situations. But focus on the quantity, because most candidates will give 4 or 5 ideas at most for a brainstorming question. But to stand out, you have to give 8, 9, or 10 ideas. So you do not want to explain too much each idea to your interviewer. As an interviewer, to be honest, I heard all of the ideas that are possible because I applied my cases 1,000 times. So you're not going to be innovating there. Just impress me in the range of ideas. You can have normal ideas, out-of-the-box ideas, very crazy ideas, and very fast, like produce a lot of ideas. And if I imagine, like, if you can do that in 2 minutes, what is this guy or girl able to do in 2 days? It's incredible. So focus on standing out by the quantity. Categorize your ideas to give it some bones, a skeleton. It's, in a way, brainstorming is half structuring, right? It doesn't need to be that messy. It doesn't need to have 3, 4 layers. It's usually 1 or 2 layers, and you just categorize. Like, I have ideas for the short term, for the long term. I have ideas for product, price, promotion. I have ideas that are easy to implement, hard to implement, and so on, right? So it depends. You need to practice to have a feeling of, like, what's the nice way to categorize your ideas. Finally, for the synthesis or conclusion, this skill, guys, it's not that important. I will tell you why. 50% of interviews, in my experience, don't reach the conclusion. The case gets interrupted after some brainstorming, some math, and then the interviewer says, like, yeah, okay, cool. What do you want to know about the company, or do you have any questions for me? Why? Because usually people are running out of time, and mainly because this skill is more teachable to a junior person. Math, structuring, brainstorming, they are all very hard to teach to a person really fast, right? So you have, like, to develop them over time. But conclusion is communication. It is like, oh, you should say this first, not this. So you can change the order, or you have to think about numbering things and so on. So it is important. Definitely, it's a super important skill. I learned so much at working at McKinsey. But everybody is improving all the time, right? Senior people, like, everyone is learning communication lessons. But the idea is to follow a formula in the case, right? It's the most robotic part. I recommend you, my golden formula is to repeat the key question to make sure that you are answering to the right question. Then you give your recommendation or recommendations, 1, 2, or 3, up to 3 recommendations. This should be delivered in the first 20 seconds because it's the elevator closing and the CEO is going away and he knows what to do. Only then you start exploring, double-clicking each one and explaining the reasons why you recommend those things. And you can use data from the case and also new things that you thought about. It's good to use numbers. It's good to sound data-driven. And they're going to look at your recommendation with, like, more respect. what is there a right recommendation? No, there's no right or wrong. Something I didn't say yet, but it's important. There's no central school of case interview, right? So it's a decentralized practice. Like business, there's no like right, like it's not mathematical, right? It's a mix of math and other things. So and in the firms themselves, there's no standardization. Some people come to me and say like, "Hey, Flavio, I talked to this McKinsey guy and he said A," and then I talked to this other McKinsey guy and he said B. What the fuck? And actually, the interview training is actually 3 hour long. After 3 hours, like talking about like, yeah, this is what we assess, this is the evaluation, they set you off to interview people on your own without even like anyone to see how you're doing. So you basically do a lot based on what you learned and your own experience. I didn't. If I didn't study like that, it's very likely that I will not expect that and so on. So that's why, for instance, this formula is really expected. Good. I didn't mention, but cherry on the cake is to have recommendations with risks and next steps. Right? It's a small brainstorming that you do to complement, to say what can go wrong in a recommendation or what analysis you would like to do next. The delivered video recommendation is super important. Also, should be short, should be to the point. If you speak too much, you're gonna lose points. So take your time, organize your thoughts, bullets, speak short sentences, deliver numbered items, and finish. Do not ramble on and on and on. Some people have the tendency to do that. Good. So I had to rush a little bit to be on time, but we still have 12 minutes to do the Q&A. So let me look at the chat if we have anything. Okay, the chat. I don't think we have questions yet, but now we do. What are common pitfalls to avoid? That's a very big question. It's not very specific. I would say that most candidates, I'll talk about one pitfall that I think it's huge, right? Because I can talk about pitfalls forever. But one which is huge is to come with a mindset that you are expected to be super smart and to impress your interviewer in like that you know everything. It's not like that. People fail if they do that. You have to be prepared, but you have to be confident that you know some things. But you have to be coachable and open to listen to your interviewer, right? Because if he or she, they are thinking like, if this person is on my team, if I'm their manager, how will they react? Like if I tell them a new information, will they absorb it really quickly? Right? That's what I mean by being coachable. And are they open and curious and wanting to know more, asking for help? This is the attitude that I see sometimes missing because people think that they have to impress, they have to be the consultant, and sometimes they even don't ask some questions. They pretend they know, and then it comes back and bites your butt. That's unfortunate. Okay, next question. Thank you for the great input. I have one question. What kind of advice would you give someone whose main problem is to get really nervous in case interviews and then really barely concentrate? Do you have any advice how to overcome that? Yes, I do, because this is common, right? I had many coaches. The main thing that you can do is actually not in the interview, is outside before the interview, is to diversify your chances, right? People who say like, oh, my dream company is Bain, they're so cool, and I love the people, and I applied to Bain, and I don't want to apply to others. I don't want to apply to A.T. Kearney. I don't want to apply to Oliver Wyman because I want Bain. And then you put all your hope and energy in one process. This makes people extremely nervous, right? Because they know like, oh, this, if I fail now, I cannot come back after like only a long time. And this is a huge pressure on yourself. So the best, one single advice I give to people is like diversify your chances. I went to Arthur the Little, then I went to McKinsey after many other people. Over, I think, 40% of consultants worked in other consulting companies before the big three. So consider everything. Practice, practice, practice. You have to be under pressure. Like often, you have to do it cases with other people, and eventually, you will get used to it. You will never be 100% yourself. Like everybody gets nervous and delivers like 70%, maybe 80% of what they're capable of, but still, it's the same thing for everyone. So it like kind of standardizes. Okay, I have some questions about note taking. How often? Oh, I like note taking. So, how often should I flip over paper to interviewer, and what if writing is a bit messier? Doesn't matter, right? So you should be able to read your own handwriting. Very awkward if you like write something and it's just like, oh, and then you like, what is this again? So this is the only thing that I think it should be important. It's important in note taking. Doesn't mean that if you have ugly handwriting. I have a horrible handwriting, and it doesn't get better because I only type stuff. So it doesn't matter. You should show your paper often, right? You should involve your interviewer. Remember, like being coachable and so on also means asking for your interviewer's opinion often and checking if he's okay with it, right? And showing and being friendly. It's how you would treat a client. This is a important, let's say, information for your interviewer. So do it often. You notice a mistake in your calculation. What do? You call it out, of course. Don't pretend that nothing happened. You should say, "Oh, I caught a mistake." It is actually very expected to make mistakes, and sometimes you catch it yourself, which is much better than being shown by an interviewer that you made a mistake. So you definitely should say like, "Oh yeah, I think that's definitely 1-0 too much," and let me recheck everything because I'm not really sure that I got this right. And then you take your time, you correct it, and say like, "I'm sorry, I really made a mistake, but now I think it's good." Do you have any tips to improve your mental math skills, specific trainings or apps? Mental math is okay. It's not, yeah, it can impress some interviewers, not all of them. You can use, I think Victor Cheng has a tool that you have to quickly do calculations and so on, like increasingly difficult numbers. So check it out, check their website for mental math. I don't know if it's still available. It was a long time ago. Based on your experience and interaction with applicants and other consultants, what are flaws, weaknesses the most CEMSs have based on your education, our education that we should be aware of in interviews? That's a good question. I don't think that CEMSs have a special flaw or weakness. I think we are all like to be on CEMS, there is some tough selection process very often. So many people haven't failed yet, right? They did well at school, they did well at university, they did well at masters, they are CEMSs, it's competitive, they're winning all the time, right? And sometimes the case interview is the first failure experience for real, because there are so many good people actually, like only the best of the best are competing for real. So I think it's regarding maybe expectations management and also confidence, right? Never be so underconfidence is definitely, it hurts your application because although many consultants are underconfident and it's very common, you shouldn't be able to project confidence. Otherwise, the clients wouldn't pay millions for your advice. And on the other hand, overconfidence is also a problem, right? Being cocky and being like, I know better, I did this before, and so your attitude can also mean that you're not a fit, usually cultural fit. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, let's wait a few seconds. Maybe someone is typing one more. So, okay, if not, I am going to, this one you've seen already. We are anxiously waiting for applications. If you are excited about the program, by the way, the deadline is 31st of March because we process applications in batches. So we do make financial decisions based on scholarships and so on in batches. So it might be that the next step, there will be other application batches also, but we don't know how much scholarships are we going to. For the second webinar, let me also copy that on the chat. If I were you, I would, and you're interested, right? If you're interested to attend, I would just complete it now. It's way shorter than the other ones, like just 1 minute. And then you're good to attend on February the 8th. We are going to solve a case following our methodology with a volunteer. It's going to be way more interactive than this one. You're going to have to do exercises with us and write down your answers and compare with what we got. So you're going to put in practice what we talked about here and hopefully really learn and understand what the 7 skills are about, right? So I definitely recommend you to join. It's also going to be 90 minutes and we're going to send the link afterwards. Okay? 2 p.m. Central European time. Thank you so much. It was great to spend this time with you. Yeah, okay, punctual. And yeah, hope to see all of you or some of you next time as well. Feel free to message me through HighBridge or any questions. You can add me on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible and very responsive. And please, let's stay in touch. Whatever you need, I might be able to help.